What is it about being watched? It's a primal fear, the feeling of eyes on you when you think you're alone. It's the subtle shift in your reality, the slow dawning horror that your safe space isn't safe anymore, that someone has taken an interest in you, not a friendly interest, an obsessive one, a predatory one. Tonight, we're not diving into fiction. We're exploring the terrifying gray area where real life becomes a nightmare. We have 3 stories for you, submitted by people who lived through them. These aren't just spooky tales. These are true stalker stories that reveal how easily the fabric of a normal life can be torn apart by a single, determined person. Get comfortable, lock your doors, and prepare yourself for some truly creepy encounters. Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe, a college student who believed her campus was the safest place in the world. She learned the hard way that a predator doesn't always look like one. She calls this story The Library Ghost. Chloe was a sophomore, a history major who practically lived in the university's oldest library, a grand, Gothic building named Atherton Hall. It was her sanctuary. The smell of old books, the quiet rustle of pages, the low hum of concentrated study. It was her home away from home. She had her favorite spot, a secluded carrel on the 3rd floor, overlooking the main quad. The first time she noticed him, it was nothing. Just a guy, a few tables over, thin, with glasses and messy brown hair. He was a face she vaguely recognized from a freshman seminar. She didn't even know his name. She'd look up from her textbook, and their eyes would meet for a split second before he'd quickly look away, as if embarrassed. It happened a few times. Chloe thought nothing of it. Campus was full of socially awkward people, herself included. The first real flicker of unease came a week later. She'd been complaining to her roommate, Maya, about how the campus coffee shop always ran out of her favorite hazelnut syrup. The next afternoon, as she sat down in her usual carrel, there was a coffee waiting for her. A hot latte with a sticky note on the sleeve that read, "I heard they had hazelnut today. Thought you'd like one." There was no name. She was more confused than scared. Had one of her friends left it? She texted Maya, who had no idea what she was talking about. Chloe, wary but also a broke college student, eventually drank the coffee. It was a kind gesture, she reasoned. A secret admirer, maybe. But the next day, there was a book on her desk. A niche, out-of-print history book she'd mentioned wanting during a study group session 2 weeks prior. A book so obscure she'd had to special order it. And here it was, in near-perfect condition. There was no note this time, just the book. Now, the confusion was curling into fear. Someone wasn't just being nice. They were listening. Closely. They knew her coffee order, her study schedule, her specific academic interests. She started scanning the faces in the library, her heart thudding. She saw him again, the guy with the messy brown hair. He was sitting in his usual spot pretending to read, but she could feel his attention on her like a physical weight. Chloe started changing her routine. She studied in the crowded common room of her dorm. She went to a different coffee shop off campus. For a few days, it seemed to work. The relief was immense. She felt like she could breathe again. She had convinced herself she was overreacting. That ended the following Monday. She was walking back to her dorm after a late class. It was dark, and the campus paths were mostly empty. She heard footsteps behind her, keeping a steady, even pace with her own. She sped up. The footsteps sped up, her heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't dare look back. She practically ran the last 100 yards, fumbling with her keycard at the dorm entrance, her hands shaking. She slammed the door behind her and leaned against it, gasping for air. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, "You walk fast. That red scarf looks great on you, by the way." Chloe felt the blood drain from her face. She was on the 5th floor of a locked, keycard access only dormitory. He shouldn't be able to see her. She crept to her window and peered down at the street below. There, standing under a lone street lamp, was the guy from the library. He was looking right up at her window. He saw her and he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile of ownership. The police were called. Campus security took a report. They identified the student as Leo, a sophomore in the computer science department. They spoke to him, and he played dumb. He said he had a crush, that he was just shy and didn't know how to talk to her. He claimed the text was a misguided attempt at a compliment. With no direct threats, there was little they could do besides issue a no-contact order and tell Chloe to be vigilant. Vigilant. The word felt like a joke. How could she be vigilant against a ghost? He wasn't in the library anymore. He wasn't following her. It was quiet. Too quiet. For 2 weeks, there was nothing. Chloe started to hope, to pray, that it was over. That the warning from security had scared him off. The final, terrifying event happened on a Thursday night. Chloe came back to her dorm after a movie with friends, feeling more normal than she had in a month. She unlocked her door, walked into her room, and flicked on the light. Everything looked normal. Her bed was made, her books were stacked. But on her pillow, placed dead center, was a single, white envelope. Her name, Chloe, was written on the front in a tight, spidery script. Her breath hitched. Her roommate, Maya, was out for the night. The door had been locked. How did it get there? With a trembling hand, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of her, sleeping in her own bed. It had been taken from the foot of the bed, from inside the room, in the dark. On the back of the photograph, a single sentence was scrawled. "I just want to watch you dream." Chloe didn't scream. The sound was trapped in her throat. She backed out of the room, ran down the hall, and banged on the door of her resident advisor, sobbing uncontrollably. Leo was expelled. The police found more photos on his laptop, dozens of them. Photos of her in the library, on the quad, walking to class. They discovered he had cloned her roommate's keycard after bumping into her and stealing it from her bag for a few minutes. The university moved Chloe to a different dorm for the rest of the year, but the damage was done. Her sanctuary had become a cage. She never felt safe on campus again. That feeling of being watched, even after he was gone, lingered for years. A ghost in her memory she could never truly escape. The violation of a safe space is a common thread in these real horror stories. A home, a campus. These are the places we are supposed to be able to let our guard down. Our next story comes from a man named Tom, who, along with his wife Sarah, found their dream home in the country. They were seeking peace and isolation. But they soon discovered that isolation can be a weapon when you have the wrong kind of neighbor. Tom and Sarah bought a small, 2-story house on a 5-acre plot of land, nestled deep in the woods. Their closest neighbor was a quarter-mile down a winding dirt road, an old man named Mr. Abernathy, who lived in a ramshackle cabin. When they first moved in, he seemed like a charming, rustic character. He brought them a jar of homemade jam and told them stories about the area. He was friendly, overly friendly. He seemed to know things he shouldn't. "That's a nice Subaru," he'd said to Tom one day. "Must be good for your commute into the city. You leave around 7:30, right? I see your headlights from my porch." Tom brushed it off as the idle observation of a lonely old man. The strangeness began with small things. They'd come home to find a small pile of vegetables from his garden on their back porch, zucchini, tomatoes. A kind gesture, except they'd never find him leaving them. They'd just appear, sometimes when they were only gone for an hour. It was as if he was watching their driveway constantly. Sarah started to get unnerved. "It's like he knows our every move," she told Tom one night. Tom, trying to be rational, decided to install a small security camera on the back porch just for peace of mind. A few days later, they checked the footage. At 4:13 a.m., in the grainy, black and white night vision, they saw him, Mr. Abernathy, walking silently across their lawn, placing a single, perfect tomato on their doormat before retreating back into the darkness of the woods. The way he moved was silent, deliberate. It wasn't the shuffle of an old man. It was the stealthy tread of a hunter. The feeling in the house changed after that. The peaceful silence of the woods now felt menacing. Every creak of the floorboards made them jump. They started keeping the blinds closed, even during the day. The psychological games escalated. When Tom would go outside to mow the lawn, within minutes, he'd hear the roar of Mr. Abernathy's old mower starting up. He'd look over, and the old man would be out in his own overgrown yard, staring at him. Not waving, just staring. When Sarah planted a flower bed, the next day, Mr. Abernathy had dug up a patch of his own dirt in the exact same shape. It felt like he was mirroring them, mocking them. They were living in a fishbowl, and he was the face pressed against the glass. These weren't just odd occurrences. They were a series of calculated, creepy encounters designed to unsettle them. The breaking point came on a Saturday night. They decided to have a small bonfire in their backyard fire pit. It was a clear, cool night, and they were trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. As the flames crackled, they heard a noise from the woods that bordered their property. Tom shined a powerful flashlight into the tree line. Nothing. But a few minutes later, through a gap in the trees, they saw it. The flicker of another fire, deeper in the woods. A smaller, wilder fire. They immediately put their own fire out and went inside, hearts pounding. Who would be having a fire out there, on his property, but facing theirs? The next morning, driven by a mixture of fear and anger, Tom decided to investigate. He walked to the edge of his property and pushed his way into the dense woods. After about 50 yards, he found it a small, cleared-out area. There was a crude, makeshift stool made from a stump, a pile of cigarette butts on the ground, and the charred remains of a small fire. The spot had a perfect, unobstructed view of their entire backyard. Their fire pit, their back porch, their kitchen window. He had been sitting here, watching them. But the worst was yet to come. Lying next to the stump was a spiral-bound notebook. Tom's hands shook as he picked it up. He flipped it open. It was a logbook. Page after page of meticulous notes, all in Mr. Abernathy's spidery handwriting. 7:32 a.m. Tom leaves for work. Subaru. 10:15 a.m. Sarah in garden. Blue shirt. 6:45 p.m. both home. Lights on in living room. 9:20 p.m. bedroom light on. Then off. The entries went back for months. He had logged every detail of their lives. Their comings and goings, what they wore, what they ate for dinner when they ate on the porch. It was a complete and total invasion of their existence. They called the police. An officer came out, looked at the notebook, and went to talk to Mr. Abernathy. The officer came back an hour later, looking weary. He says he's just a concerned neighbor. The officer explained. He claims he was keeping an eye on the place for you. The notebook? He says his memory is bad and he just writes things down. He's an old man. There are no threats here. Legally, my hands are tied. No threats. The words hung in the air, hollow and meaningless. They weren't being threatened with violence. They were being suffocated. The law couldn't protect them from the psychological terror of being constantly, obsessively observed. They put their dream house up for sale a week later. They sold it at a loss, desperate to get away. The last time they saw Mr. Abernathy, he was standing on his porch as they drove away for the final time. He didn't wave. He just watched, a faint, knowing smile on his face. He had won. He had driven them out of their own home just by watching. Our final story tonight comes to us from a man named David, and it's a chilling reminder of how technology, something designed to make our lives easier, can be twisted into a terrifying tool for stalkers. This is a very modern kind of true stalker story. It's about the stranger you willingly let into your car and into your life. He calls this story 5 Stars for Fear. David worked a demanding job as a graphic designer in a busy city. He often worked late, long after the public transit had stopped running for the night. So, ride-sharing apps were his lifeline. He used them almost every night. It was routine. He'd finish his work, tap a few buttons on his phone, and a few minutes later, a car would be waiting for him. He never paid much attention to the drivers. A polite hello, a thank you, maybe some small talk about the weather. But one night, he got a driver named Marcus. Marcus was different. He was chatty, overly so. He didn't just ask, "How's your night going?" He asked what David did for a living, where his office was, if he was single. David, tired and just wanting to get home, gave polite but vague answers. "Graphic design, huh? That's cool. Must be a fun office," Marcus said, his eyes flicking to David's in the rearview mirror. "You guys have one of those open plan setups?" David just grunted a non-committal, "Yeah." He was relieved when the ride ended. He gave Marcus 5 stars, as he did for everyone, and forgot about it. Until a week later, he ordered a car, and when it pulled up, he saw the same face behind the wheel. Marcus. "Hey David, my man. Fancy seeing you again," Marcus said, with a familiarity that made David's skin crawl. Throughout the ride, Marcus picked up the conversation exactly where it had left off, as if no time had passed. "So, I was thinking about what you said last week," he started, "and I know this great Italian place not too far from your apartment. You should take your girlfriend there." David went cold. He had never mentioned a girlfriend. He deliberately avoided any personal details. How did Marcus know he had a girlfriend? And how did he know a restaurant near his apartment? The app only gave a general drop-off point. David was unnerved. He gave a forced, tight-lipped smile and said nothing for the rest of the ride. This time, he gave Marcus a 1-star rating and left a comment about the driver being too personal. He hoped the app's algorithm would ensure he never got paired with him again. For a while, it seemed to work. He got different drivers for the next couple of weeks, but the feeling of being watched had returned. Sometimes he'd be waiting for his ride and see a car that looked like Marcus's drive by slowly. He told himself he was being paranoid. Then came the text. He was in his apartment one night when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Saw you took a silver Toyota tonight. Bad choice. The driver went the long way. I would have gotten you home faster." David stared at the screen, his blood turning to ice. It had to be him. Marcus. But how did he get his personal phone number? The app anonymized everything. Then he realized he had called a driver through the app once, months ago, to clarify a pickup spot. His number was no longer anonymous to any driver he had done that with. And Marcus, with his obsessive memory, must have saved it. He blocked the number. The next day, he got a text from a different number. "Blocking me won't work, David. I'm just looking out for you." David went to the police. They were sympathetic, but told him the same thing Chloe and Tom had heard. Without a direct threat, it was just a series of messages. Harassment maybe, the officer said, but hard to prosecute. Change your number. He also reported Marcus to the ride-share company, sending them screenshots of the texts. They sent a canned response promising to investigate and then a follow-up email confirming the driver had been deactivated from the platform. David felt a wave of relief. It was over. He was safe. That night, he worked late again. He walked out of his office building around midnight, exhausted but relieved. He walked to his own car, which he decided to start driving to work, despite the expensive parking. He didn't want to get into another stranger's car ever again. As he approached his car, he could see something was wrong. It was sitting low. All 4 tires had been slashed. Tucked under the driver's side windshield wiper was a folded piece of paper. His heart was a jackhammer in his chest. He knew who it was from before he even opened it. The note was written in angry, block letters. "You can't get rid of me that easily. Now you need a ride. Hope you get a good driver." David never stayed in that city. The deactivation from the app hadn't stopped Marcus. It had enraged him. The man knew where he worked. He knew where he lived. He knew his face, his car, his life. The systems David had trusted for safety, the app, the police, had failed. He broke his lease, quit his job, and moved across the country to live with his sister. He sold his car and for years felt a jolt of pure terror every time he saw a vehicle that resembled the one Marcus used to drive. The freedom and convenience of modern life had become his prison. 3 stories, 3 different people, 3 lives forever altered by the terrifying, suffocating obsession of a stalker. It's the loss of security, the constant looking over your shoulder, the fear that invades every corner of your life. It's a horror that doesn't end when the credits roll. Thank you for joining us tonight and for listening to their stories. If these experiences resonated with you or served as a chilling reminder of the world we live in, please take a moment to hit that like button. And if you want to hear more explorations into the dark side of human nature, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Stay aware and stay safe.